Whenever literally anything Pokemon related happens, it never fails to rekindle my childhood and remind me exactly how much I love this franchise. It means so much to me, it always did, and it probably always will. And random point, Beware from Pokemon Sun and Moon is literally one of the greatest and most precious things ever, and would be a great addition to the cast in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So thanks to the new Sword and Shield trailer thingo, I was very eager to talk about Pokemon, but not particularly eager to talk about Sword and Shield. I'm not the type of guy that likes to put random input on trendy topics just because they're trendy, and I feel like you don't really want that either. So hey, best of both worlds. The only thing I was thinking while watching is that they might as well have called it Pokemon Alpha and Beta, where Alpha is Sword and Beta is Shield, you know, for alpha males and beta males. Anyway, that wasn't a funny joke at all. But there was one thing I am eager to talk about, and that would be the Elite Four. I'm not talking about all the different permutations of Elite Four, all the different evolutions of Elite Four, the core of what the Elite Four is. The OG Kanto Elite Four. Lorelei, Bruno, Agatha, and Lance. Especially Lance. To many of us, the Elite Four were the heroes of our childhood. They were the pinnacle of epicness that only someone with extreme badass tendencies in the art of the Game Boy can reach and have bragging rights to your friends because, yes, you've managed to actually challenge them. While now I could potentially get through a Pokemon Fire Red game in a couple of hours, when I was a kid, it was a monumental journey where the pinnacle of this adventure was the Elite Four. Four trainers revered by not only me, but my entire circle of friends, and believe it or not, some of those friends weren't even imaginary. I was quite the gangster back then. But in any case, being that I think most of us did grow up with the Pokemon anime, we never really got the Elite Four fleshed out. They showed up at certain occasions, kinda not really doing anything, because Ash was terrible Pokemon trainer. I didn't gain any of my love and respect for them from that outlet. For me, a lot of what Pokemon was the combination of my personal experiences in the game, as well as my vicarious experience through Ash's journey in the anime. It was something I loved, it was something my friends loved, and it was something dope, at least for me, all round. Now, I don't usually get into the long personal introductions to my videos unless it's actually relevant, and in this case it is, because while all the gym leaders get screen time in the anime and we get to learn about all of them, and in fact we get to see Ash defeat all of them, pulling them back to humanity, the Elite Four are never disrespected in the anime. The Elite Four remain as pillars of power that I've only experienced at the very peak of the game. A point where I was prideful of my journey, and a point where I can respect these 4 consecutive battles where the strategies used for gyms until this point are negligible compared to the thinking that went into building your team around fighting these 4 Goliaths. I've spoken to a few other people, and people do have the same sentiment in this regard, but the Elite Four commanded a respect that no other characters in Pokemon managed to harness. Some would go as far as to call them the heroes of their childhood. And it's this exact point that I am trying to elucidate through this introduction, because this video is talking about how no one understands the Elite Four. As kids, none of us grew up with the manga, and none of us actually learned who they are. We only have this vague interpretation of them being absolutely badass and commanding respect. And that's only the tip of the iceberg for who they are. I hope you do enjoy this Pokemon analysis, as well as this Overpowered analysis, because the Elite Four are 4 overpowered trainers in the Pokemon universe, and 4 trainers that, even though they get respect from everyone, which is the point I'm trying to make, I don't think anyone respects them for who they are. They're just respected for who they aren't. The first and foremost, most important thing that I have to say after reading the Pokemon manga that many people, myself included, did not notice was the Elite Four are villains. Yes, from chapter 40 to 90, they're the main antagonists of the Pokemon series. And, well, as we know, overpowered antagonists in general are hard to write. They're hard to write in a conceivable way that they are that strong, and they're hard to write in regards to how they're eventually defeated. And once they are defeated, it's hard to maintain the level of respect that they once beheld in their overpowered, untouchable state. The Elite Four nailed all of it. They're overpowered characters done right, and I'm referring to all 4 of them because they're all drastically different personalities that converged together to form an alliance that attempted to completely take over the Kanto region. One major difference between the Pokemon manga and the Pokemon anime in general is the basic battle system behind Pokemon battles. In the anime, it's essentially commanding your Pokemon to do what they want to do and fight other Pokemon, and that's lovely. In the manga, it becomes JoJo's Bizarre Adventure-esque stand battles. The trainer is the king of your side of the chessboard, and all of your Pokemon are the pieces. How you use them and when you deploy them is all part of your strategy in taking down your opponent. The most common and viable strategy in hardcore Pokemon battles in the Pokemon manga is taking down the enemy trainer. Now, sometimes it's important to keep some of your Pokemon hidden. Sometimes you have to get in on the fight. If they capture the king, it's all over, and if you capture their king, well, that's really how you are victorious. Yes, Pokemon Pocket Monsters, that game we played as a kid, it's basically four-dimensional chess where your life is on the line. That's right, I went there. The Elite Four are each masters in this regard. Bruno has his Pokeballs on the edge of nunchucks, where before starting a battle with an opponent, he makes sure that his Onix is the battlefield, hidden underground. So the moment things can start, the entire battlefield will shift, attempting to throw both of them off, but Bruno's intense training will allow him to stay on. Also, when he and his opponent will try to send out a Pokemon at the same time, Bruno will be victorious for the most part because of the extra reach his nunchuck garners. Someone will send out their Pokemon, but with Bruno's nunchuck, he can send out his Pokemon far closer to the enemy trainer, immediately annihilating him with his Hitmonlee or whatever he decides to throw out. He conditioned his body and fighting style to be the last one standing in any given battle. This is why Bruno is a terrifying opponent in his own right. Now, each of the Elite Four concocts their own strategies and ways of fighting in how they attempt to take down their opponents, but also they fight with their minds. Before the arc even begins and before the Elite Four moves, they understand that the strongest trainer in Kanto is Red. Red is going to be getting his own OP analyses because he's one of my favorite overpowered protagonists of all time. I mean, he's no One Punch Man, but he's up there. So, step one in the Elite Four's plan is beat Red. Bruno issues a challenge to Red. Red eagerly faces him because at this point he's the best there ever was, and he's happy to take on a new challenge. He's eager to keep honing his skills, and in the middle of this fight that seems to be relatively evenly matched, as scary as that sounds, the story no longer follows Red. Yellow becomes the protagonist of this arc. Now, so much of the arc is the mystery of what happened to Red. Red goes missing, and all of a sudden the Elite Four begin their attack. They have thousands of Pokemon under their control, storming different cities where the gym leaders are literally defending the townspeople, and it becomes an all-out war. An all-out war on the mainland while the Elite Four are devising their own plan on their own island. Now, I'm going to be skipping the individual plot twists in the actual arc because that's neither here nor there. The point is, in developing the Elite Four as a menacing force, they're able to take on the gym leaders that we've befriended as well as many other former allies without even being present. Not only that, but with all of our protagonists gathering together, you know, yellow, blue, green, dope characters by their own right, but they were already not only missing their gym leader allies in this war, but they were missing Red, the strongest trainer of them all. Aside from being overpowered adversaries, they're adversaries that think. The Elite Four stacked the deck so hard against the protagonist, their victory was nearly assured. There isn't a trainer alive that can beat any of them one-on-one. At least, that was the plan. Now, each member of the Elite Four follows their very own philosophy, which is what makes the dynamics of this group so much more powerful as well. They are awe-inspiring because even though they have dynamically different personalities and reasonings behind what they're doing, they converge for this single goal, and they work seamlessly in tandem with one another to accomplish what they are aiming for. For Agatha, it's a revenge plot, and for Lance, it's a philosophical cleansing of the evil within humanity. In the arc, a major plot point is that there is some sort of mystical power to the Viridian Forest, and the people that were born there and lived around there ended up growing closer to their Pokemon, to the point that they can almost sense their thoughts and heal them. Now, as we know, the bond between Pokemon and trainer is also what makes this interesting, because the Pokemon themselves, they're not just mechanical beings that you command to do what they do, but their very own adrenaline boosts will give them better reason to fight. No one has a better connection or bond with their Pokemon than Lance, fights the antagonist. He is also from Viridian Forest just like Yellow, and his bond with Pokemon is so strong that the people that harm Pokemon due to shifting around the environment to their whims are perceived in his eyes as evil. He wants to burn down society and rebuild it after his own image of what it should look like. Now, his philosophical ideals are not entirely wrong, which gives weight to his evil machinations. And despite the fact that he's the only member of the Elite Four that actually wants this end goal, the others are more than happy to team up with him because it also checks off their individual goals. Bruno is partially under a mind control, easily shaping his will to fight a strong opponent into a willingness to fight every strong opponent that stands in their way, and so on and so forth. On an individual level, the Elite Four is greatness. As a team that works together, not only is it seamless, but it gives them this badass air of none of them being superior to the other in any capacity. And the one thing that we always pride the protagonist of, love, friendship, bonds with your teammates, that's literally what pushes most shonen protagonists forward. It's Ash's bond with his Pokemon. It's Ty's bond with his Digimon. It's Yugi's bond with his friends, and this literally applies to everything. Naruto will get his boost because he loves more. Luffy cares about his teammates. Ichigo's going to rescue a friend that was captured. The ideal of love and friendship, which is what draws on inner power, is always on the protagonist's side. At least it's supposed to be. Lance flips all that on its head. No one has a stronger bond with their Pokemon than him. No one cares about Pokemon more than him. It's true, it warped his philosophy in regards to valuing life, but it's not like his points hold no bearing. The only reason why he's viewed as an antagonist, not a protagonist, is because his approach to things is far more radical than the average protagonist would be. However, his philosophies as well as psychology far better befits a main character to a villain. That is why he's so respected. That is why in the back of our minds we're rooting for him. That is why he's the most powerful trainer at this point in the series. As we've seen in the red versus blue rivalry of the first 40 chapters of Pokemon Adventures, and I want to do an entire video on that rivalry as well as their final battle because that was just too beautiful. We learn what it means to be a Pokemon trainer and what it means to be a Pokemon master. In the clash of philosophy between Red and Blue, Red is the one that triumphed, and everything that Red had that pushed him forward, Lance has better. Lance draws out every ounce of power from all of his Pokemon to the max. He comes up with the most incredible fighting strategies that relies purely on his teamwork with his Pokemon. That's why it fits so well that he's overpowered. That's why it hits so hard that he's an overpowered antagonist, as opposed to a hero. That is how to write an overpowered villain. Now, the way the Elite Four is defeated is also fantastic. For the most part, overpowered characters do not do that well. I mean, once they're defeated, it doesn't make sense that they were defeated because they were so overpowered. It's stupid that they lost. Well, all of their strategies did work out well, as I was saying. They've set it up in a way that they not only have numbers against Yellow, Blue, and Green, but they also far outclass them in power. Where Agatha is a perfect opponent for Blue, Agatha wanting revenge against Professor Oak, Blue's grandpa, as well as a character that fought Blue in the past and far overpowered him. Lorelei is a far more powerful trainer than Green, and despite the fact that Lance and Yellow share many characteristics with one another, being that they're both from Viridian Forest, they can both sense their Pokemon's thoughts, they both have the most incredible bond with their Pokemon. The major difference is Lance is the strongest Pokemon trainer around, and Yellow sucks. Oh, and they also have Bruno. The Elite Four are owning this, and they didn't even lose because of a slight miscalculation. They lost because of my favorite character in all of the Pokemon manga, and my third favorite anime/manga villain of all time, Giovanni. So, Giovanni is one of the most brilliantly concocted villains I always think of off the top of my head when I'm thinking dope villains, and he will be getting his own video, never fear, but I want to talk about the Elite Four now because they are a pinnacle of childhood that no one understands, me included. What ended up happening to Red was when Red was fighting Bruno, they were equivalently matched until Lorelei stepped in and froze him solid with Agatha's help. Yes, 3 of the Elite Four converged to take down their greatest threat. They far overpowered him. They froze him in a way that he could not move and he will slowly die. They left him there in a pit in Mount Moon, slowly disintegrating in a pillar of ice. Now, the reason why the good guys ended up winning is because Giovanni knew that this was going on. He knew that, well, if the Elite Four take down the Kanto region and and raise the place, he's not going to be able to be running his mafia, is he? No. Giovanni is a far more straightforward character than this massive philosophical war that Lance is waging. The guy wants his money, capiche? Now, I don't want to get into his character because that's opening a whole new bag of worms that I am saving those worms for a future date. But he wants to take down the Elite Four, and he knows that they outclass Team Rocket. So, first thing Giovanni does is, well, go missing. That's right, since Red beat him, Giovanni has not shown his face. The Team Rocket triad, 3 elite members of Team Rocket, being Sabrina, Koga, and Lieutenant Surge. Yes, Team Rocket was so powerful, they corrupted the gym leaders and had guys in the government working on the mafia side. They're a freaking awesome evil organization that I'm going to be covering in another day. Definitely subscribe. But the Team Rocket triad were helping out the good guys, and Giovanni, well, he broke Red out of his ice sculpture, and Red didn't even know who it was that did so. In middle of the arc, we found the sculpture that should have been encasing Red, but it was broken open in the back, and Red was nowhere to be found. Giovanni freed him. Giovanni let him do his own thing, so Giovanni could continue moving about unnoticed. This time, Red beats Bruno and does heavy damage to the Elite Four in this final attack because no one even saw Red coming. All the fights that our protagonists ended up taking were outnumbering the Elite Four. For example, Blue and Koga, who were bitter enemies in a previous arc, worked together to fight Agatha, where they were both on the verge of death. Koga from blood loss, Blue from poison, where their life energy was being sucked away by Agatha's Gengar, who merged with their shadow. Pokemon battles in the manga are a totally different league. Or where Sabrina and Green teamed up to fight Lorelei, where they had their arms frozen together, and Green chopped her own arm off to continue fighting because she knew that Lorelei had this ice handcuff technique thing, and her arm was actually a ditto all along, and she outsmarted Lorelei. Green is a total mad lad. I love her. And so is Sabrina. All the fights were done through wit as well, but the 2 far most impressive battles were 1. Blaine, a former scientist that worked for Team Rocket, as well as the fire-type gym leader of Cinnabar Island. This guy was the scientist that created Mewtwo by mixing his own DNA with some of Mew's. So he had Mewtwo on his side. It was Blaine and Mewtwo versus Lance. And this goes to show how powerful Lance is, that he was able to stand up against Mewtwo. Mewtwo is obviously more powerful than anything in Lance's arsenal, but Blaine could only use him for a certain amount of time before depleting his own life force. So the first thing Blaine did with Mewtwo is use Mewtwo's psychic powers to destroy the mechanism in all of Lance's Pokeballs so he can no longer send out his dragons, making him a far easier opponent. However, Lance, predicting this, already sent out his dragons that were hiding throughout the caverns, poised for the ultimate surprise attack. All the fights are a matter of different levels of outsmarting your opponents, and Blaine lost to this one. Lance was up against Mewtwo and came out on top. Whatever the reason may be, that's the sign of a powerful antagonist. He ended up taking an L to Giovanni, but that's because Giovanni outsmarted him entirely. He set up this massive attack where Lance was floating on these bubbles, using bubbles of different reflecting light to make all of their attacks invisible, and it was this epic strategy. But while it looked like Giovanni was getting completely pummeled, and he was getting completely pummeled, he's not as powerful as Lance, at least that's how it seems. He rolled a Pokemon past him unbeknownst to all of them, and it was a Beedrill that popped the bubbles from behind and put its stingers to Lance's neck, threatening to kill him. The reason why Giovanni got so far was because he is a piece that didn't fit in the puzzle. No one knew who he was since he lost to Red, and the only reason why he ended up defeating Lance, a character who's passionate about his Pokemon, is because Giovanni's very ideals changed when meeting Red. Red was that idealistic kid that actually beat Giovanni in the past, and Giovanni saw himself in Red. When Giovanni was a kid, he also fought with that ideal and with that passion, so that's why he had Beedrill in his party. Giovanni is a master of ground-type Pokemon, but Beedrill was a very close friend he's made when he caught it in Viridian Forest, the very birthplace of Yellow and Lance, which represents the bond between man and Pokemon. This is an extreme character development on Giovanni's part, aside from the fact that he orchestrated everything behind the scenes and did not actually face Lance head on, but with a strategy to circumvent Lance's entire attack pattern. Now that is how to defeat an overpowered villain. Every piece in the puzzle of the previous arcs were put together to take down this monumental threat of the Elite Four. Team Rocket teamed up with the protagonists. The gym leaders were fighting on their own turf. Blaine came out of retirement with Mewtwo on his side. And despite the big wins that were taken by Yellow and Red respectively, Giovanni was the MVP be. And not only was he a villain, but he wasn't a villain stronger than the villains around now. He was just smart enough to outthink all of them in a way to align the fighting force on his side. And he doesn't even walk away with a big W. He doesn't take credit for this. It doesn't need to be his big win. It just all smoothly goes exactly like Giovanni wanted it to. And it's just icing on the cake that the very Pokemon he used for his final attack was based on a bond with his Pokemon. A character development that he discarded and viewed as a negative in the previous arc. Giovanni was all about materialism and cold decisiveness. Him winning with Beedrill was through emotion and passion and love. The very same attributes Lance was using in his plan to cleanse humanity in Kanto. That's defeating an overpowered opponent with respect. And the same can be said for literally every other member of the Elite Four, but I'm not here to read you different manga panels. I'm here to talk about why it's more beautiful than you've ever realized, and I hope that the Elite Four can be even more loved in your eyes after this video. I will take this moment to say that Lance does have time to shine in future arcs in the Pokemon Adventures manga, but that's not really villain Lance as much as Lance as a character that's grown tremendously from this point. Again, this video isn't per se a video on Lance. Lance just happens to be the spearhead of the Elite Four, and this is a video of why the Elite Four are overpowered characters done right, and why no one gives them the credit they deserve. Speaking of not getting credit they deserve, I deserve freaking credit, okay? Not trying to toot my own horn here, but since I started doing this Pokemon manga analysis stuff, so many anime YouTubers started picking it up. It makes me so proud. Mother's Basement started reading it. Lost Paws started reading it. And a few others started reading it that I don't remember right now offhand. I'm very proud of myself because this manga is an untouched gem. I highly recommend it to you all. The pace is incredibly fast. The battles are some of the best you'll see. The characters are out of this world. And whether you do read it or not, please subscribe anyway. It would be really appreciated for more anime or Pokemon analyses, as well as satire videos. And let me know what you would like to see in the future as far as Pokemon, as far as anime, or as far as this Overpowered Done Right series that honestly is a lot of fun to put together. Overpowered characters in general are loved characters, but are just so hard to write well. I feel the obligation to talk about it when that actually does happen. And with the Elite Four, it did happen. So with that said and done, please leave a like, link in the description to my Twitter. Feel free to follow me there. To my Patreon, all patrons are invited to the Discord server. And you patrons don't even realize how much you freaking help me. It's unbelievable. With this new adpocalypse thing going on, your support is crucial for survival. I hope you have yourselves a most wonderful evening. And remember to stay weird, fam.